Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show, we welcome back the incredible Rico stories with another exclusive to the DMT Forest to Fear channel. And as ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. Why, it really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled Return to Kandahar. Let's get straight into that. Prologue. We were as grasshoppers to them. Part 1. Awaken the Undead. It had been almost 2 years since the botched US pullout from Afghanistan. The Chinese made lucrative financial deals with the Taliban in exchange for access to rare earth minerals in the areas of the Kandahar mountains. These areas were long known for their mysterious sightings of unknown humanoid creatures and giants. A Chinese mineral exploration team was now missing from the mountainous areas of Kandahar. The Taliban forces refused to assist in any such efforts, and the remnants of the Afghan army were disorganized, incapable, and afraid. As the Afghan economy worsened, the new leadership was concerned about what the loss of the Chinese financial investment would do to the fragile economy and governing authorities. They authorized the Chinese to bring in a military security unit to search out the mountains and hopefully claim the rampant anxiety among the local mountain tribes who had opposed any mineral exploration. This would turn out to be a deadly fool's errand. A month earlier, Chinese Special Security Forces began their recon of the mountains. The last transmission was now 7 days ago, and they had found no sign of the mineral exploration team. Multiple efforts to contact them via radio and satellite link were to no avail. Several aerial searches had turned up no sign either. Prime Minister Rahim was holding a meeting at the behest of the Chinese mining director, Xing Pao, accompanied by a previously unknown Chinese official who had just arrived in the country. And the meeting was conducted in English, as that was the common language known to both parties. Mr. Rahim began the meeting in his heavy accent by saying, "Gentlemen, we have bad news." He went on to say that some goat herders from the mountains had found pieces of equipment belonging to the Chinese military units. His assistant, Mahmoud, brought out some canvas bags containing helmets, broken rifles, and some torn blood-stained uniforms. He then announced, "There were human remains there also. The men were ripped to pieces by something." The new man nodded his head and spoke in almost perfect English, saying, "I am Colonel Chen with the Ministry of State Security. We have a serious problem that we cannot solve alone." Part 2. A World Away. I was 2100 hours in Fort Campbell, KY, when the phone rang at the residence of Brigadier General Harrison Tate. It came answered the call from Hawk's old friend, Tim Ross, Director of Joint Task Force, Chimera. Kimmy and Tim had the usual exchange about which football team was better, the Houston Texans or the Dallas Cowboys. After a moment, Kimmy handed the phone over to Harry, and he heard the all-too-familiar voice say, "What's going on, buddy?" Hawk responded with, "Aye, okay over here, but I'm betting that ain't the real reason you called." Tim responded with, "Well, let's just say there is something real shitty going on in Afghanistan." "Oh, no," said Harry. "Don't even think about sending me to Afghanistan." And Tim asked Harry and Chuck to muster the teams in HQ at 0700 for briefing. "You really won't believe this," said Tim. "The Chinese and the Afghans are asking for our help. I need all the hands in the TOC, Tactical Operations Command, first thing tomorrow." "Well, at least you could have done was read me a bedtime story," said Hawk, and then hung up. Akemi looked at Harry with a true look of concern and said, "Baby, I think I know what this is about, and it isn't good." Assembled at 0700 in HQ was Chuck, Hawk, Eric, Jamal, Tank, and Alex along with the entire cadre. On the big screen was Tim Ross and Secretary of State gormlessly flanked by the Chinese ambassador Ping. And Tim stated, "Ladies and gentlemen, I think most of you have heard the legends about the giants of Kandahar. Well, it ain't no legend." He went on to say that a Chinese mineral exploration team had disappeared, and now some equipment and remains of the Chinese Special Security Team tasked to find them have been discovered. Some goat herders in remote areas reported to the Taliban that they had seen a giant figure late at night carrying away 2 of their goats. And before Tim could say another word, Chuck was on his feet proclaiming, "Hell no, we ain't helping the fucking Taliban." The Secretary of State Gormless spoke up. "Gentlemen, I understand how you must feel, but we are not helping the Taliban. We are going to assist our allies, the Chinese." And Hawk responded, "Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, when did the Chinese become our allies?" And then Ambassador Ping spoke up. "Gentlemen, please understand that there are many within our government who appreciate America and remember how you helped us with our dragon problem. Please, hear us out." Harry and Chuck sat down and reluctantly agreed to listen. Tim explained that without US military assets in country, we no longer had the ability to conduct proper bombing missions on the caves where these beings live. But we will have the blessing of the provisional government to bring in limited assets to prosecute this mission. "That mission is," said Hawk. Tim put up a map and pointed at 2 spots. He said that satellite imagery had identified 1, possibly 2 different individuals, but 12 or more feet in height, emerging from these locations. "We believe this may be the last of the giants that we were in the process of trying to eliminate before the hasty withdrawal." Chuck and Hawk looked at each other and simultaneously said, "Hasty?" And then Chuck said, "More like a hurried clusterfuck." Tim gave a sheepish smile and continued, "We're authorized to take all the alphas of the 5-man teams to prosecute this mission. A Delta and a SEAL team will be assigned here to the remaining JTC members for any homeland cryptid threats. We will have full access to some Chinooks and Black Hawks that we left behind. And, as we speak, 2 C-17s and crews are prepping your equipment for departure at 0600 tomorrow. I'll see you there. That is all. Dismissed." Part 3. A Bridge Too Far. The 2 enormous C-17s sat on the tarmac waiting for the teams to board. Tammy was present with her 15-month-old son Anders to bid Eric farewell. "My love," Eric said, "what classic will you be reading, our little Viking, in my absence?" "How about Paradise Lost?" Tammy responded. Fine choice," said Eric and kissed them goodbye. Their equipment was already loaded, and as the team reluctantly prepared to board, the dogs on the other hand seemed happy that they were going somewhere. Kimi handed Harry a thumb drive and gave him a big kiss. Jeannie bid Chuck goodbye, also as team members possibly hugged their children for the last time. The wives stood behind the fence waving with the children in tow as the planes taxied to the runway. The roar of the engines faded, and all that could be heard were the soft sobs of family members. En route, the Alphas checked their 458 SOCOMs, Barrett 50s, and Desert Eagles, loaded with a special alloy rounds comprised of rare earth minerals. The sonic weapons were programmed with unusual sounds resembling some ancient language. The 40mm grenade launchers were equipped with a penetrator/exploder rounds. All the blue steel katanas now bore strange, ancient-looking engravings. Each team was equipped with a powerful tranquilizer gun, and Harry plugged Kimi's thumb drive into his laptop to view a historical report of giants from antiquity to the more modern times. And he called Alex and Eric over to share the info. Upon landing, the teams were met by Tim, his longtime friend Lin Song, 2 rabbis and 2 Israeli Mossad agents posing as archaeologists to accompany the teams. They had some ancient scrolls and tablets with strange letters and symbols. The Alphas reviewed these things, for they had already been studying the material. 2 Chinese men were present to make sure government investments were protected, and Hawk said, "Well, will I have to waste an asset by assigning a man to keep an eye on you?" "That's my job," said Lin Song, as they remained silent while they and Lin scowled at each other. It appeared that the Taliban had supplied no men, and Chuck said, "Well, that figures. The only monsters them bastards will go after is a defenseless woman, and the Mossad agents spoke many languages and had studied ancient Babylonian and Sumerian. They introduced themselves as Daniel Omer and Jacob Golan. They also introduced us to Rabbis Cohen and Joseph, who smiled and said that they were present for both technical and spiritual assistance, even though they were all armed. Tim Ross smiled and said, "A preacher with a gun? You'd be welcome in Texas any time." And that seemed to break the ice, and we all had a well-needed laugh to ease the tension. Tim called out, "Briefs up. Tonight, 2 Chinooks will carry you to your primary LZ, where some of you will dress up as goat herders." He pointed to a map and said this location is about halfway between 2 cave entrances. We have imagery of it. It is also near the location where a mining group and a Chinese security team were believed to be slaughtered. In the past, many an Afghan goat disappeared from here also. There will be 10 goats with tracking clips implanted beneath their hide. If the giants escape our ambush, and for some reason we can't track them, we'll home in on the GPS signals. We'll have gunners dug in to catch them in a crossfire. Just over the rise of this big hill is where we will land at 4 Birds and Lee. When we catch these bastards flat-footed, other team elements will attack from there. If we don't stop them, we'll have ISR and we'll launch in pursuit. Our objective is to take them down before they can reach the caves. Or if not, the Hellos will carry you to your respective LZs. I'll be standing by about halfway between a makeshift airfield in a C-130 TOC, Tactical Operations Command, which will also serve as a field combat hospital. Chinese allies and our Mossad friends will penetrate the caves with you. The rabbis, the team commander, and 4 team members will set up at the cave entrance. And the locals have been ordered to stay away from the area, so you won't have to worry about any RPGs flying your way. And Harry said, "Okay, Tim, since we know where these caves are, there can only be one reason for not collapsing them." "Affirmative," Tim replied. "These giants are believed to each have a female mate and offspring. Grainy night images revealed what appeared to be females with juveniles about 5 to 6 feet in height at the cave entrances. We no longer need DNA, blood or tissue, or if possible, we need a live male and a female specimen." And Chuck and Harry shook their head angrily. And Chuck said, "You can bet your sweet ass this is my last mission. We need to stop playing God." And Harry followed by saying that he would resign his commission and retire when it was over. Tim looked at him and pleaded, saying, "Please, I don't like it either, but this mission came down from the highest of levels. And if we don't do it, they will use private contractors." Among the grumbles and murmuring, the cadre agreed. And right on cue, Jamal quoted a line from a famous sci-fi movie. "God creates dinosaurs. God destroys dinosaurs. Man creates dinosaurs. And dinosaurs eat man." Part 4. A Deadly Destination. As the choppers landed over the hill from their designated area, 4 team members dressed as local goat herders made their way to the ambush point. They were to walk about shooing the goats from one place to another so the bells around their necks would sound off. 2 two-man fire teams were concealed among the boulder field and dug into the ground to catch the giants in a crossfire. And should the trap fail, Chuck would be tasked with boarding his Chinook and proceeding to the cave designated Armorite. Hawk was tasked with directing the Black Hawks to collect team members and proceed to the cave designated as Bashan. The high-altitude drones would fly over watching. A B-1 would orbit a high altitude on standby with Thunder and Lightning cruise missiles should the mission fail. And as the sun set, a feeling of isolation set in, as the only sounds were that of the goats rustling about and a few team members quietly chatting. The rest of the team was concealed just over the rise as a cold wind stirred the still of night. And Hawk called out over comms, "Hark to our elements. Acknowledge ready with 1 mic key." And one by one the static was heard as the snipers and machine gunners checked in. Then, in the distance, drone imagery picked up 2 large heat signatures 7 miles away, moving at over 30 miles per hour. And the dogs had been left in the Chinooks so as not to broadcast the smell, but they were now becoming agitated and pouring to get out. And Tim Ross's voice was heard over comms saying, "2 large tangos inbound from the west at a fast clip. Contact imminent." The goats broke into a panic as the 4 team members tried to control them. A sniper with a Barrett 50 and a machine gunner with a .30 caliber were dug into the north and south as a smell accompanied by a feeling of dread permeated the night air. Hawk motioned for Alex and Tank to return to the Chinooks and calm the dogs as the other elements aimed their weapons. 2 hulking figures appeared over the rise. One stood over 12 feet, the other close to them. They paused and sniffed the night air with their massive heads tilted back. The choking smell seemed to be settling on the snipers and gunners as they tried to remain silent and stay calm. The giant figures crouched about 50 meters apart, as if contemplating the next move. The goat herders had managed to control about half the goats, while the others fled in panic, bleating and running as if their lives depended upon it. The ghosts that ran to the north were about to overrun the position of the gunner and sniper, when the giants broke into that direction in a full sprint. The plan to get them in a crossfire was now compromised as the goats ran almost over the dugout. The giants were now quickly converging upon the goats to a point about 30 meters behind the gunners. Chuck had overwatched for their position and began to call out, "Aboard! Aboard!" But it was too late. The gunners repositioned their weapons to their rear and opened fire out of sheer terror. They were met with a hail of small boulders as their targets were shrouded in a thick dust that they had kicked up. They were overrun, and all that was seen was one giant stomping them with his huge feet. The giants now rushed off on foot as the teams ran to their respective Chinooks to give chase. Team Wolf was accompanied by Jamal and Tank, while Team Hawk and Eric and Alex scrambled for their position. En route, they discussed their tactics and readied their equipment. In transit, the Alpha scrambled to put on some special equipment. And about 5 minutes after landing, they emerged wearing ancient-looking armor with shields, but made of modern materials. Well, there were strange symbols and markings on the shields, helmets, and even the blue steel katanas. Each team member had been given an electronic insert for their helmets, which purpose was to tone down the effects of mind speak. It was believed that the giants communicated telepathically, placing thoughts and images into people's heads. Hawk, having had experience with such things, reminded everybody how important it was to keep a clear head. And real-time video would be transmitted back to the rabbis so as to properly interpret anything lost by Mossad members while in the heat of battle. The rabbi's task was to discern any language or images and provide proper responses to the giants and mitigate their abilities. The action plan was for 5 team members to split off and penetrate the caves further in search of any female or offspring, while the main elements engaged the giants. Part 5. Revelations. As Team Jamal and Tank pushed into the cave, an aura of dread began to fall upon the team members. Some reported a ringing sound in their ears, while some said they felt tired or off balance. Lieutenant Trip Steele was split off with his team to locate the female and offspring. Tank whispered to Jamal, "These caves have captured the ambience of a haunted Halloween exhibit." And Jamal responded, "Yes, one where the monsters devour the attendees." As they crept deeper into this huge cave, they saw what looked like ancient statues broken and lying about. Jamal raised his hand to stop and shook his head as strange images of ancient scenery filled his mind. Tank remarked that he felt as if he was hallucinating and shook his head. Team members were shaking each other for a reality check when a constant droning bass sound started. The sound quickly turned into a jabbering that the Alphas, particularly Jamal, were starting to understand. And suddenly, Jamal clearly understood a voice saying,
"Who be you, which are descended from Egypt, but have the Babylonian king's blood coursing through your veins? Even your eyes reflect the same, and you bring these creatures here, which bear the smell of the Sumerian warhounds."
Team Eric and Alex were now deep in their cave, and they began to see ancient carvings on the walls. Some team members reported feeling anxiety or dread as they plodded into the darkness. The NOGs seemed to be malfunctioning and batteries draining. Master Sergeant Jack Goodson was to lead his team into the belly of the cave to locate the female and her young. He ordered the team to go red tactical lighting. Others reported feelings of sadness as images of dead friends and loved ones flashed through their minds. And Eric remarked that all he could think about was Dante's Divine Comedy. I feel as though I have skipped the part where Virgil leads Dante, and Beatrice is now showing me dark revelations. And Alex remarked, such a heavy feeling of dread could only emanate from Lucifer's prison in the ninth circle. Then a rapid jabbering began that thundered throughout the cavern. The jabbering slowly became a discernible language that Eric and Alex could understand, and suddenly a booming voice proclaimed,
"Who art these pale-skinned Norsemen with the blood of my kinsmen?
And
why do you bring these filthy hounds of Sumer into my abode?"
Jamal was now shouting, "Who are you?" And the booming voice said,
"I am Amorius of Kadesh, descended from the Amorites. My people form the 36 tribes. My kinsman, Gathanicus, and I are the last of our kind."
Amorius continued,
"You are here with a pale skin from the north who shares your blood. The Watchers were fools to teach men such secrets. Are you here to torment me along with these pink-skinned peasants? Once we ruled together, and now they rule you? And you dare bring this Hebrew filth and Eastern savage into my abode?"
"Show yourself!" shouted Jamal. "Don't hide in the shadows!" It was then that a 12-foot 6-inch giant stepped forward, and some team members soiled themselves as his glaring red eyes pierced them. Amorius shouted, causing small rocks and dust to be dislodged from the cave.
"You miserable creations destroyed my once great people. We were here before you, and we once ruled. That is,"
as he pointed upwards with one of his 6 digits and said,
"until he set you against us.
But now you must die." Jamal gave the signal for the team to attack as he and Tank engaged the giant, with Samson and Thor seeking a lateral advantage. Lieutenant still motioned for his group to break off and head deeper into the cave in search of the female and offspring. As Eric and Alex ready for battle, the giant loudly proclaimed,
"Who are you, and which circle of hell do you abide?"
And then a thunderous response came. "I am Gathanicus, descended from Great Og."
"And you allow this Hebrew worm to accompany you? And this would-be conqueror from Far East is with you also? Oh, but the fallen taught you mortal dung-heaps alchemy and deceit, did they not? Join us, and together we can crush these insects under our toes."
And Eric responded, "We do not allow monsters to rule." Gath paused and said,
"Your kind once worshipped us. But I see that you took a mortal concubine, and she bore you a bastard child."
Eric, filled with rage as Alex tried to restrain him, "Brother, do not allow him inside your head." It was then that Gathanicus stepped into the dim red glare of the tactical lights to display his 12'2" hulking frame and glowing red eyes. He roared,
"This world was ours, and now we live in a hole under the earth. For this you must perish, along with your refuse."
Eric rushed, followed by Alex, followed by Ashabi and Cujo to flank the giant. Sergeant Goodson and team members split off in search of the female and her young. Part 6. Gadal Milhama. A Great Battle. Let's get straight into that. Jamal and Tank, followed by Samson and Thor, flanked the giant left and right to distract him. They ordered the team to open fire as the giant proved agile and threw bowling ball-sized rocks, striking a team member. The bullets caused the giant pain as he darted about with ease, dodging the 40mm grenades. He shoved his great spear into Jamal's shield, knocking him flat as the spear point pierced Jamal's shoulder. Tank fired his 50 cal Desert Eagle, hurting the giant but finding himself on the ground from a huge rock that struck his shield, great force, and putting a large dent in it. Thor and Samson locked onto the giant's ankles, and he screamed while grabbing them by the scruff of their necks and flinging them away with great ease. A .458 Socom round struck his right jaw, and he reeled back in pain, long enough for Jamal to right himself and fire his Desert Eagle, with the round glancing off the monster's skull, dizzying him for a moment. He roared and went on the attack again, swinging a mighty sword and kicking a man 15 feet through the air, where he crashed into the cave wall. Eric and Alex veered left and right, covering their shields and firing their Desert Eagles. The giant easily threw bowling ball-sized rocks, knocking them both down again. The giant raised his huge sword to strike Eric while on the ground, when a 40mm grenade struck him in the chest, knocking him backwards. This was followed by a hail of the special alloy rounds that caused the giant to retreat around a corner. Suddenly, an arrow the size of a tall fence post impaled a team member, followed by more arrows. The team was pinned down, and Jamal and Tank had to act before another team member was killed. Tank shouted, "Grenades!" And he, along with Jamal and other team members, tossed fragmentation grenades around the corner. The giant roared in pain, and the team advanced before the smoke could clear. The bloodied giant charged as Abishi and Cujo locked onto his calves from the rear. A hail of bullets tore into his face as he threw rocks and charged through the formation, scattering them like toy soldiers. Deep into the cave, Lieutenant Steele and his team members, followed by Agent Wang, continued in search of the female giant and child. They were armed with a powerful tranquilizer gun and a sonic weapon meant to confuse the giants. Every 100 meters or so, they placed signal boosters to enhance communications. Ancient carvings and artifacts came into sight. Some crumbled and strewn about the ground. A rancid smell of death overwhelmed them as they put on their respirators, but they already had begun to feel tired and sluggish as their eyes watered. Piles of bones, both animal and human, lay about, and they began to experience confusion and dread as fearful images filled their heads. Agent Wang began hearing a woman's voice in Mandarin, and she convinced him the Americans were his enemy. He raised his rifle and pointed it at Lieutenant Steele, but before he could pull the trigger, Corporal Banks jumped him, and they rolled across the floor in a struggle for the weapon. Sergeant Goodson and his team trod deeper into the cave in their effort to locate the female and her offspring, stabbing over bones from both animals and humans. They started hearing a ringing sound and felt dizzy and nauseated as they tried to maintain their footing on the uneven floors. Suddenly, a hail of grapefruit-sized rocks were flung through the air, striking one team member's tactical helmet. Another rock struck PFC Grant in the shoulder, putting him down and knocking Trank Gun out of his reach. Corporal Haddad spoke Arabic, and, in his head, he heard a voice say,
"I am Samara of the Cimarron clan, and you dare bring this filth to invade my home?"
She appeared through the dust and dim light. She was frightening, but at the same time beautiful, with the face of a Greek goddess under the grime and dirt. She had an almost hypnotic effect upon him. He found it hard to concentrate, and Sergeant Goodson tried to snap him back to reality, for this female stood over 10 feet tall and could easily crush him. She spoke to him again, saying,
"You desire me. You cannot harm me. Protect me."
And all he could think of was her dark, bugling eyes, her sculpted full lips, and her wild but flowing curls and olive-coloured skin. For a giant, she was captivating, and he was frozen in awe. He abruptly turned his rifle on Sergeant Goodson, and they struggled for control of the weapon. Part 7. Spirit versus Flesh. Harry and Rabbi heard the comms traffic from inside the cave, and yet another team member had gone down along with Agent Omar. And the Rabbi said, "Somebody must recite the verses. I have to go." And Harry told PFC Sykes to grab a 40 mic, and they entered the cave with the Rabbi in trail. When the three arrived, Hawk immediately took the scrolls from the unconscious Agent Omar and gave them to the Rabbi, who started reciting the Hebrew verses. The giant became enraged and trained his attention on the Rabbi, and Hawk poured his blue steel katana for the giant to see. And he shouted, "Come get this motherfucker!" And Corporal Sykes fired a 40mm grenade, striking the giant in the abdomen, doubling him over. The two team members who could still stand fired their special alloy rounds at the giant, causing him to pick up a double handful of rocks and dirt, flinging it at them as they pancaked to avoid the debris. Harry grabbed the sonic weapon and pointed it at the giant. The giant seemed bewildered at the sounds and confused by the Hebrew verses as the rabbi chanted them loudly. Eric and Alex attacked from behind with their huge blue steel katanas, and Eric shouted, "By the force which moves the sun and the stars, your perverse existence must end!" He plunged the 3-foot blade up through the giant's ribs and into his heart. The giant backhanded Eric, knocking him flat as he slumped forward, in great pain, roaring so loud that the glass of the MVGs were cracked. Alex leaped through the air with his Ioria katana held overhead, and while Gaz Anarchus was still on his knees, Eric swung down with a mighty blade, severing the giant's head. He fell to the ground with a loud thud. It was over. And Maria screamed at Jamal and Tank.
"You poisoned our water. You tainted our food, and then you dropped your thunder upon us. You killed our young and old, and you destroyed our temples and holy objects."
Agent Golan shouted, "There was nothing holy about Baal and Moloch," and recited ancient text to anger the giant as the team re-engaged. At that instant, Agent Golan threw 2 flashbangs at the giant, blinding him. He staggered back and was struck in the chest by a 40mm grenade, knocking him backwards into the cave wall. The remaining members fired as Jamal took the opportunity again to flank the monster. And Jamal and Tank engaged in a violent pitched battle, with Samson and Thor biting chunks from the monster's legs. It was then that Chuck arrived with 2 men who took aim at the giant's face. A round from the Barrett 50 struck the giant at the hairline, taking out a huge chunk of flesh and knocking him down. And as he tried to regain his feet, Jamal swung his blue katana in an attempt to behead the giant. He managed to get his left arm up to defend, and the blade severed it at the forearm. He screamed and stared at his arm in horror, and Jamal proclaimed, "Be this the pandemonium that was at Solomon's temple, or merely stone? It represents the false hope of your paradise lost." As Amoreus fell on his side, he made a mighty swipe with his good arm, knocking Jamal flat. Blood spurted wildly from his severed arm as he crawled to get his sword. And Tank kicked the sword out of his reach and emptied his Desert Eagle into the giant's face. And he gasped and cursed, saying,
"You think the work commanded by the Holy of Holies is done?"
And Tank drew his katana and took the giant's head. As the rabbis monitored the actions of the team members, Rabbi Joseph radioed Sergeant Goodson and team that Corporal Haddad was under the female giant's control and to recite a verse in Hebrew. Sergeant Goodson recited the words, and it apparently worked, and Corporal Haddad became confused as they struggled for control of his weapon. Suddenly, Corporal Crane smacked the side of Sergeant Haddad's helmet with a strong forearm, knocking him to the ground and bringing him back to his senses. The female giant and her male offspring were proving to be quite the task to defeat. Rifle fire was heard as Agent Fong had engaged the mother from behind a boulder. Another team member lay flat after being struck by rocks. And Corporal Crane had now picked up the 40mm and fired on the female, striking her shoulder and ensuing in a high-pitched ear-busting scream. The young male charged with a large club but had already become groggy from the tranq round that hit him earlier. They dodged him as he swung the club, narrowly missing Corporal Crane. Another tranq round was fired, and suddenly Alex appeared, subduing the young giant. Sergeant Goodson yelled, telling the rest of the team to fire on the mother. And as she rose to grab a large rock, a .458 Socom round struck her just under the chin. She slumped, gasping for air and choking on her own blood. She drew her last breath, cursing at them. Sergeant Banks had knocked Agent Wang unconscious and zip-tied him, and the team regrouped to open fire on the mother and the offspring. Sergeant Foster, Spec Dobson, and Sergeant Banks moved closer as the feeling of dread was replaced by fear when a sudden hail of rocks the size of grapefruits and baseballs came at them. They were encountering a desperate, angry mother and a female offspring. Agent Golan grabbed the tranq, putting 2 rounds into the female offspring, while team members fired on the mother. Jamal suddenly appeared with a net and restrained, screaming, "Fire on the female!" He picked up the 40mm and fired it one-handed, striking her in the chest as she went down hard. The female offspring was now almost unconscious as Jamal restrained her, and the team advanced upon the giant. She looked at Sergeant Haddad and said,
"Your people once worshipped me, but you have helped this filth destroy me."
And he responded, "I have never worshipped an abomination like you," and fired his .458 SOCOM into her forehead. Part 8. Chapters closed. Books opened. 4 team members were dead, another 4 seriously injured, one of whom might not make it. And Harry shook his head as he said this just wasn't worth it. The team had been ordered to collect any tablets, scrolls or artifacts lying about and photograph the statues and carvings. The rest of the team were busy recovering bodies and the wounded, while some set explosive charges. The alphas emerged from the caves carrying the unconscious offspring, a male and a female that would no doubt be the object of study for many years to come. After returning to the airbase, surviving team members and those who were able gathered in one of the C-17s for debriefing. Both Lieutenant Steele and Sergeant Goodson reported discovering torn uniforms with patches that said SGI Silverus Group International. And Tim said, "Yep, the boss made a play for this and was planning another. He was already recruiting former Russian Spetsnaz. If we hadn't done this, he might have got a hold of it, and we all know how that would be." And Jamal, as if cued, recited another line. "Genetic power is the most awesome force this planet has ever seen. The problem is, no longer that we can't, it's should we." And Tim responded with, "Well, at least our scientists will have it instead of his." And to that Tim said, "Oh yeah? Like we can trust our scientists more than his." Then Tim went on to make an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, listen up. When we get back to Campbell, Lin Song and I are going to finally get married. Everybody is invited." As the teens were boarding the C-17s, Agent Omar and Glencord Hawk and Chuck over. Agent Omar whispered to them, "Gentlemen, it was an honor, and rumor has it that these helicopters will never fly again." They smiled and embraced each other as they parted ways. At the wedding reception, Tim called for everybody's attention. He announced that Harry and Chuck will be retiring next month, but will stay on as consultants for a while. "I'll be moving on also when they find a replacement for me. Lieutenant Tripp Steele, Harry's longtime understudy, will be promoted to captain and assume command of Joint Task Force Chimera. At this time, I would like to introduce you to the 2 newest additions to the Alpha family." The 2 huge men strode in from the side entrance. "May I present Abdul Gabriel, 6'10" and 375 pounds, and Lars Elstad, 6'9" and 395 pounds. The team members were already busy in the crowd, making bets on what hobby or passion the new alphas would espouse. Tim asked them to speak and share something about themselves with the crowd. And Abdul introduced himself and announced that his passion was archaeology, and especially ancient hidden civilizations. And it was as if a silent drumroll had begun as Lars slowly came forward and stated, "Well, I enjoy gardening and it seems as if I was born with a green thumb. And in my spare time you will find me playing in the dirt." And needless to say, nobody won that bet, and the cadre came forward to welcome their new brothers in arms. Epilogue. Past and present coexist. Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. Well worth the wait, and my oh my, what a fantastic story that was. Rico, you really do seem to push the levels higher and higher each and every time you send over a story. Thank you ever so much for your dedication, your patience, and most of all, your incredible talent. As ever, Rico, I really hope you enjoyed this one as much as I, and I can't wait for the next adventure. Well, guys and girls as ever, You know the drill. Let's see if we can take this one viral, like the last Giants of Afghanistan story I did many years ago, now sitting at a calm 500,000 views. But of course that would only happen with your likes, shares and comments. So please do let us know down below what you thought. Please do like and share. It really does help build the community and our channel further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. Now if you don't know by now, but think you could write the next big hit, then please do get in touch with me at the contact email, which is as on screen. contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. As ever, guys and girls, thank you for your patience. I hope you're all doing really well this week. Had a fantastic week at work or school, or perhaps you're like my eldest and studying for exams in the coming months. Whatever it is that you do, I hope you're taking a fight back to it and giving it your all. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry. The two team members who could still stand fired their special alloy rounds at the giant, causing him to pick up a double handful of rocks and dirt and flinging it at the two team. Oh, please tell me I press record. Yes. Team Eric and Alex were now deep in their cave. Damn, can't vape and talk, fam. Take 2. Action. The sonic weapons were programmed with unusual sounds resembling some ancient language. The 40mm a Delta and a SEAL team will be assigned here to Fuck you.